Okay, so I want to talk about my experience leaving Blackistan. Okay, Black identity extremism, the Black cult, the so called Black community. Okay, so basically, I've always had a sort of, you know, I've never felt fully integrated into the Black, so called Black community. Okay, I grew up in a suburb and I emulated my mother's way of speaking, which was this very preppy, stereotypical white caste sort of way of speaking. And basically, very suburban, very preppy. And we moved more to like a, semi hood type of thing. Um, it was like a light version of a hood. I can't say it was a hardcore hood, but it was still hood. But different black identified people were saying that I talked white and that type of thing. So very early on, I didn't really felt like I fit into the so-called black identified community. Like that felt like a very sort of hostile sort of introduction, if you will, because if I couldn't, that was basically like taking my voice in a sense. It's like, how am I supposed to speak? Am I just supposed to start pretending? Like, it didn't make sense to me. But, and I'm not saying like, oh, I would talk smart. I don't believe that. It's just a different way to talk. But, and then looking back, I do realize it was like, it wasn't that hostile. I think it just made them uncomfortable and they actually wanted me to integrate. I think they wanted me to hang out with them, but not like that. But still, it wasn't a very um, sort of harmonious start, if you will. But that was my first experience. But then that type of situation almost always made me question. I was always questioning this sort of black identity. Okay, like what does this mean when it's black? Because it goes confusing. It's like how can you talk like a supposed genetic population. I was just questioning things. I did have my moments where it was like trying to, distance myself away from black identified people. Sometimes I would gravitate more closely. It was never like that level of discrimination. Like I've always had black identified, um, kicked up with them, had friends in middle school, high school, and that type of thing. They were typically more, preppy, suburban as well, or dorky, whatever you want to call it. But um, I was questioning a lot of things, questioning that. I also had like an aversion to like I remember going to like an African pride festival or something like that, and I was just looking around like, you know, skeptical, cautious. Looking back, I realized I just didn't. It wasn't just. I was like that with a lot of things. I just didn't like. It was more not so much this huge aversion to blackness, whatever that is, but more authority, almost pressure. Like, who are you to dictate my identity? I don't remember identifying as black. I don't remember identifying as African American. It wasn't making sense to me. I'm like, I don't speak an African language from a a language associated with Africa. Um, that type of thing. It's like it was almost just I didn't like. I wanted to discover who I was, and I was kind of being resistant to that. There was some aspects of like shame and animosity and that type of thing, which could flare up. But for the most part, I realized it was just like more like self discovery and like resisting things I believe naturally personality, this type of form, like I'm gonna decide who I am, type of thing. Okay, and then a lot of it was just, is unreasonable, is irrational, and that type of thing. But uh, that was experience, and then later on, I low key wasn't identifying as that because it's like more of like I don't want to identify as a black. I don't want to identify as a color. Definitely don't like African American. Like now I realize like my suspicions were true, where they're just trying to like foreignize us and marginalize us out of North America, out of history. They're just more comfortable with a lot of white cast people comfortable with us in their you know head canon that we're more in Africa, not here. Just it's easier to logically distance themselves from us, to omit us, and that type of thing. I don't care if it originated from like so-called left-wing politicians. They've been how long? I don't know how long liberals and Republicans have been the same party, but it just has that same energy, that purple magna energy. But like, who cares what they say? Um, but then and again, it doesn't make sense. I speak English. My parents did for 4 or 5 generations and further. Um, Roots go back here 400 years, so it wasn't making sense to call me African American. I wasn't jiving with that. Um, and then just everything comes with it. Like it had this cultural. People will say it's a race, but then people include a cultural sense to that. But then that doesn't always correlate. So then there was just all of that type of thing, which I wasn't feeling. Okay, more so now because it's like race isn't real. Um, that's still irrational correlations. Like I don't like when people are like black people be like this, black people be like that. Like no, they don't. They're always talking about something else. Like you can just say immigrant, you can just say southerner, you can just say Christian. Like it's the same thing like Asian parents. That's a very broad label. You mean academia cultist? Like not all Asian identified people are sort of these academia focused cultist types. It's erasure, it's omitting, and it just doesn't make sense. I can see if you guys use a more specific label, but how did you monopolize a vast territorial boundary for this very specific demographic? And that's the same thing that happens with black. Like I feel like black is even broader. It's like again, like I don't have any connect. Even these like sort of heritage African connections, those are all remote. But then I don't have like Moroccan, Arabic origins. That's in Africa. I don't have like any connection to Kenya, more East African areas, cultures, historical cultures. It's like too broad and it's like too like I don't like the whole Latino Latino mothers. It's like that's conservative mothers, that's immigrant mothers, that's bilingual mothers. Like you don't have to say Latino because that's not true. And it's like that same thing like black people this, black people that, black people that. Like I'm not fitting with that. Like so speak for yourself type of thing. But more deeper why I'm sort of, opting out of blackness, but then also still like again, it doesn't it's black is actually a caste status, right? It's always been an appearance based caste system. There's basically white caste people, Latino caste people, and black caste people. Like I'm sorry, like yellow, genetically yellow people. A lot of them are white, basically. Um, and like some Amerindian associated people, they might as well be black. Um, like they have less representation. Like I got surprised. Like I saw like an Amerindian associated person. Like like I forgot you guys existed. Like the black straight hair, dark skin. I'm like, oh, y'all ain't on TV at all. But you're black. But uh, and I don't want to identify as a caste status too. Like I'll say maybe like black caste, but not like as this strong identity. But the more things where I got away from this was like more of the politics around it and like the so-called oppression and exploitation and that type of thing. Like the one reason why I wanted to sort of opt out was because I realized I sort of lost empathy for some black identified children that were killed by cops. I sort of lost empathy for them. And I know that sounds harsh, that sounds cold, but I just want to tell the truth because I that did used to keep me up at night and I was pissed off and concerned about it. But then I'm like, wait a second. There's this black identified people are heavily represented in the US military. And like the first thing that pricked me to that was like that I don't know, the Five Bloods, something like that. It was like a Vietnam movie with like black identified people on it. I'm like, wait a second. Like that just made my skin crawl a bit. Like I didn't see the movie, so maybe I'm jumping the gun, but still, just to make a film about that when it's like we went over there and we massacred unarmed people in villages in Vietnam. Like that war was pointless. And then it's like we're blowing up. We killed people in Iraq. We killed people in Afghanistan. We lied about weapons of mass destruction. And but then black identified people are like sort of weaponizing, exploiting these deaths of these children. Like we're so victims and this and that and forth. It's like we're blowing up kids all around the world. We're blowing up kids in Africa. Brown people, black identified people. It's like, wow. I just drifted away from it. Okay. There's just too we're just too and then it's like that would be one thing, but it's like the US military is so hyped up, it's so romanticized when it's like garbage. It's basically a basic income for men. I know that there's women in it, but they're a lower they have a lower representation and they're basically, you know, scared off with rape and that type of thing. It's a basic income for men. Like most don't see war, most sit at safe bases, eating fast food, having orgies, watching Netflix, playing video games, getting checks, sitting at bases over here doing nothing. Like mostly like it's not that dangerous anymore. Like look at Ukraine, we're not even getting involved. Then we would just blow up people from planes and drones in all these other countries. Like they may have even had some deaths so there could be some deaths. Like no, it's still dangerous. Like but we're just way overrepresented in the media for me to care anymore. Like just for me to experience that made me like, oh yeah, I need to get out of here. I need to opt out of this because and then there was like seeing articles like Obama sort of, you know, coddling, infantilizing. They're like he said something like they treated you so wrong after Vietnam. No, they deserved it. There hasn't been a more war since World War II. It's just been like imperialism, power trips, sadistic shit like that. Like there's just this victimhood vibe from black identified people, like oppression Olympics type of thing. You can't have the gold medal if you're blowing up people around the world. You can't be the most oppressed, exploited people in the world. Like I'm already allergic to like victimhoody type of thing, even though I deal with it myself, but not like that. Like holy crap! Like um, you can't have the gold medal if you're blowing up other people, if you're massacring people in Vietnam. And then that's the other thing why I just wanted to opt out. It's just it's too victimhood based. Like just it's victimhood energy. Like it's draining. I'm tired of it. I don't want a victimhood approach. I don't want a victimhood attitude. It's like the reason why we lost our Africa. Like that would be one thing, but it's just so exaggerated, it's so weaponized, but it's just so nonsensical. It's like the reason why we lost our culture is because it was stripped from us. No, it isn't. That didn't happen to European associated populations, right? But there's Irish, English, and Italians telling these people like, you're not Irish, you're not English. There's Italians telling people like after one generation, like second generation U.S. Americans, like you're not Italian. Like George Bush, he will have like colonial, not colonial, but like settler, whatever you want to call it, roots, 17th century U.S. American roots. What's English about him? What's Irish about him? Like their culture wasn't. It's just because that accelerated it, but it's because we live far away from them and you develop your own culture. We developed our own culture. See, but then it's like they don't imagine being having such a victimhood mentality that you lose all reason and logic. Like that didn't happen. It's just like a small calculation. It's a small consideration. Okay, and then it's just like that type of like we don't know where we come from. Yes, from origin places from West Central Africa. That information is available, or like the DNA results, like people crying, like that information was available. Actually, like they kept a log of where we came from, like the ports and that type of thing. Regions from West and Central Africa, but that's like a middle going back a little bit. Like I can't get into this like Afrocentric type of thing. It makes no sense. As you can see, like these are like heritage cultural Italians in Italy telling these immigrants that are just one generation away that they're not Italian. But we're like five, six generations away from our closest sort of cultural, historical root Africanness, whatever you want to call it, on some level, because then we have roots going back 400 years. But then you guys are claiming to like I never seen Cajuns being like I need to go back to the motherland Europe and connect with my French roots and because they're Cajun. Think 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 like it's so rude to me to just skip over 400 years of culture and reconnect with Africa. Like it like doesn't make sense. It's like and it's like this selfish thing. Like people just like those K-pop stands, they call themselves the army. Like they're paying for their own popularity. People just want to feel like they're part of these big groups, these giant cults. Like they're just like a 5 million wolf pack. Like I'm so protected. It's like that's the only reason why people want to connect with Africa to feel like they're part of this big group because it makes no sense. Like um this sort of deep just and then it's like it doesn't make sense. It's like so superficial. It's like people will talk say like I'm anti this or I think I'm like ashamed, but it's like you like these Afrocentric Creoles, like because that's what my well, anyways, you guys only care about the aesthetic. You don't know what's historically gone on in these countries. You don't you know what's going on currently politically. You just care about the cuisine and the outfits and the jewelry, like the aesthetic. Like what's happening in Nigeria currently? Why don't you try to learn a language? It's like just very superficial, but then also this sort of like you guys froze them into this like flat caricature where everyone's a king and queen and wearing like lion robes or something when that's not the case. But as I was saying, like that's another reason like it this sort of superficial African um, culture cosplay. Like, I can't do it. Um, I have Atlantic Creole origins, U.S. Creole origins. That's pretty much it. Sometimes I will resonate with different elements from that thing. I was like used to be like in to like a lot of voodoo and like different deities, but that's about it. It's like more sentimental, and that's fading as well. So yeah, but the victimhood thing, I can't get into the victimhood thing. How some people act like the industrial kidnapping complex happened. People act like it happened today or yesterday. It ended over 100 years ago, almost 200 years ago, maybe. And then like on the tail end, it was like if it was already going towards the tail end of it, it was already lightening in a sense. So like almost 200 years, it ended. Like, why are you acting like it happened yesterday? Which is just psychic programming. It's societal programming that these white cast people have indoctrinated us with, but y'all embrace it. Like these so-called slave movies, because the slaves don't exist. What's a slave? A person who's owned by someone. You can't own another person. People are like slave masters. There's no such thing as a slave master. It's like saying child prostitute. They don't exist. You don't have to say that those terms, those terminologies. But I know that black identified people are going to resist that because they have, bottled slavery. Like a person can't be a slave. You can't own another person. It was just an opinion. It was a law, which is made up. It's not real. It's a social construct. It's a logical construct, imaginary. But that ended quite a while ago. But that's sort of the uh, black thing. Like the black caste, it has become a cult. Black cultists, self-worshipping people. But then that cult has become a brand. Like black is like Prada, white is like Gucci, indigenous it's like Nike. It's become brands. That's why black identified people don't like when people wear braids or dreads because you're violating their trademarks. Or Asian cast people don't want you wearing like winged eyeliner. You're taking away the shine from their product, the spotlight. You're using their product. It's a trademark violation. Like I'm gonna wear whatever I want. I'm gonna dress however I want. You don't own shit. But um but that's um but the angle of the brand is victimhood. So black identified people embrace victimhood. They're weaponizing victimhood, right? white cast people's brand angle is superiority. That's why we're indoctrinated by it in school, and we get all these movies and entertainment, and like they're trying to come out with live action Snow White where they literally say your fair skin makes you superior and beautiful than others. Um, wow. Um, their brand is superiority, right? They hype themselves up, and when something's hyped, we kind of get caught up in the hype, and it seems better than it really is. Our brand is inferiority. We embrace our inferiority, our supposed inferiority, because we weaponize it as sort of tragichood and martyrdom and victimhood for handouts and free passes, right? You know how you can't say nigger, but we can call you a bitch, like type of thing. Immunity, black privilege. I wouldn't say privilege exists, but there's perks. There's white perks. There's Latino perks. There's Amerindian perks. There's black perks. We do it for the perks. We do it for the handouts. I am not down with that because we still have a short end of the stick. I want a fair share, but you guys are okay with the short end of the stick and will do all the sort of manipulation and bullying of others using this sort of victimhood angle to get handouts and perks and that type of thing. Like, no thanks. To the level of black cultists, they like when black identified people are killed by cops. They like it, they want it because that recharges the victimhood brand. It's like all these different identity cults are sacrificing members of their own cult to recharge the brand. Like, I saw some alphabet cultist, LGBT, rainbow, whatever. They were like, some uh, gay identified person got killed in some country. They were like, they loved it. They were like, see, we still need pride parades because dancing around in short shorts is gonna make there's nothing even to fight for anymore. You guys just have nothing else to do. But that's another story. But black cultists like it. I'm not down with that. Like, it's just victimhood. Like, and then it's just distorted, manipulative, nasty things. Like Flint, Michigan, they tried to frame that as like a black issue when the large significant of the population was white identified people. The biggest factor is not being black cast; it's being poor. But they try to frame that as like a sole black identified issue, or like police brutality. It's not a thing. Black identified people commit a disproportionate amount of crime, which is why they get killed by cops more. Like, when you factor that in, everyone's experiencing unarmed people getting killed by cops. We're all being experiencing that at the same rate. So it's not like it's fabrications, it's distortions, it's exaggerations about all this victimhood. It's nonsensical things like bringing up the industrial kidnapping complex, which ended quite a while ago. It has nothing to do with anything. You feel like it does because you watch these, movies about it. No, that's sort of it's an illusionary trauma. You're being traumatized by illusions, but you like that on some level. It's like how women will watch Handmaid's Tale because it like women like weaponizing tragedy and tragichood. They like soak themselves in it like a sponge, and the sponge comes up like, I have these demands. It's like you can't self tragedize yourself and then make demands. But okay, so that's another aspect of this sort of self victimization that I really get into, which doesn't even make sense, right? You can't bomb people and then claim to be a victim. um not clicking. Okay. um and then there's other sort of aspects of this sort of um victimizing thing where it's like we basically do everything wrong. like like there you can't be like sometimes you like black girl magic, yes, because sometimes it's like you wake up and it's like you feel haunted. Like why you like you can't be wailing and screeching and whining that powerfully but then do everything wrong. Like the poorest demographic can't have an obsession with luxury brands. We have lower home ownership. Is it because you spent your money on Nike, whose CEOs probably, want to keep you politically handicapped? Like, I don't want donations from Nike. I want your voting records. Okay. Um, yeah. So we do everything wrong. Everything wrong. It's like they they follow us in stores. It's like we disproportionately steal from those stores. That's not discrimination, that's profiling. If there was like yellow polka dot people, and there's all these people, but some people are yellow polka dot people, and then you realize, like, say that people steal from your store every other day, and you look back in a month and you realize 95 of the people who stole from you were polka dot people, you're going to keep an extra eye on polka dot people. But then I encounter these black cultists like they following your. Yeah, it makes sense. It's reasonable. I'm not saying they're perfect or good or anything like that, but at least that behavior is reasonable. It's called profiling. It makes sense. 95% of the people who stole from him was polka dot people. So you're going to keep an extra eye, be extra vigilant about polka dot people. Like there's something so manipulative and then it's not just the manipulation, it's like it's so counter unproductive. It's so whiny. Like and it's like they they, they think that expensive car wasn't mine. Like I don't get that. We have the highest crime rates. We have the highest prison rates. We have the highest poverty rates. It's reasonable for someone to assume that you might have stolen that car. They shouldn't they're not justified in taking action about it, but just verbalizing it isn't, anything. Like, I mean, you shouldn't, but it's not totally out of bounds. As long as they don't, like, physically accost you or, you know, call the police solely based on your appearance. But if they're, like, doing something like judgy or something, what's the big deal? Okay, people, it's like, that's like gaslighting and manipulative. Like, which would be one thing, but it's just unproductive. It's counterproductive. Like I can kind of understand why there's this sort of resistance to embracing black identified people because it's this thing where we do have are expressing other things that has nothing to do with our genetics. We just happen to be populations. It's ghetto, super ghetto behavior. Like this whole country is ghetto, so I can't say ghetto, but super ghetto. Yeah, it's super ghetto behavior because we just happen to be people who have this sort of super ghetto heritage. Like people used to judge Jews; they were the original ghetto people. People used to judge Jews' behavior, but but it's ghetto behavior. You put them in ghettos. You created people created ghettos, but then they're whining about ghetto behavior. But still, and all this other stuff. But your black identified people basically want to be are bullying us to perceive them as innocent, right? Bullying us to perceive them as innocent when we're not. We people shouldn't assume that we are bad either, but they don't have to assume that we're good. Like people sort of are, you know, even I like when I'm watching like a TV show and there's like a black identified person appears on it, I'm just like sometimes I'm like a little bit like because I feel like I'm being like it feels like propaganda or something. Like when the character is like being nice or something, I'm just like because it feels like propaganda because it's like you're pressuring us to perceive you as good and nice and innocent when you're just not because you're black identified because just no one is. But at the same time we do commit a disproportionate amount of crime and have disproportionate prison rates and poverty rates. And then it's like that thing where they're like, they hold their purse when I walk by. We actively broadcast this thug imagery culture. It's like we want everyone wants like the perks and benefits of things, but none of the consequences or challenges from it. It makes no sense. Like, and part of the reason why we do that because we do want this sort of hard, tough image so people don't mess with us. But there's downsides to that. Sometimes it works, but sometimes people work up the courage and attack us, or people are going to hold their purse because there's this thug, rough image which we actively promote and broadcast. Like it makes no sense. It's that we do everything wrong thing, but expect what exactly? Like how many of you watched the first 48? That's basically black identified propaganda. Like you are supporting your own propaganda network, and that's what we do. Like we have acknowledged that these news corporations are basically propaganda networks from saying like someone black identified person made a video like about missing white women syndrome where they only focus on like missing white identified women. We see how like we'll call them out when they like say like if they shoot a black identified person, they first thing they bring up is like they have marijuana in their system and these records. But when it's a white identified person, they're down. We don't hear about if they had drugs in their system right away or at all, or we hear about how they were Christian and they were shy and they were a good boy. It's like it's propaganda. Um, or how they like will over display brown and black identified mugshots. Okay, but these same companies, so we acknowledge that, we call them out. But then these same companies that own these new corporations produce these movies and TV shows we watch, and we go and watch them. So we're funding our own propaganda network. Like I would never support black cast people again. Like just even all this stuff, but even on that alone, that's like the most counterproductive. Like there's like a dumb, we have like a dumb stereotype placed on us. We're really leaning into that stereotype there. Really leaning into it. Like, we're funding our own propaganda network. For what? You can even, there's sites like Movies 123. You don't even have to go and watch it. We're funding our own propaganda networks. And then the biggest crux of this is it's true. If someone happen, a black identity castist, black cultist happens to see this, they're still gonna do it. Like 95%, 98% of you. But I'm supposed to invest energy in the black community, this sort of totally self destructive, toxic, counterproductive behavior? I don't think so. If you don't want to be treated like a thug, stop promoting a thug image. Like, but then you see how there's like the victimhood mixed into that. But how? Like, it makes no sense. Okay. So, yeah, I can't really um, get into that. And then another issue with why I kind of opting out of Black identity extremism is um, Christianity, Muslims. I cannot, so far, too far many of us are Christians and Muslims and that type of thing. Like, hmm? First of all, like, that just, oof, it's just bad from the start. Like, you really, the religion of the invader religion, used to justify the industrial kidnapping complex. I would want to have nothing to do with the religion of an invader. It must be bad. Talk about ignoring a red flag. Um, I would be like, what's the opposite of their religion? Like, it doesn't matter if it was distorted. Something that has that many loopholes and distortion that can be easily corrupted is a crappy religion. I want a foolproof religion. I want a religion that can't be corrupted so easily. Okay, and then it's such a inherently patriarchal religion. This version that you guys are practicing, very patriarchal. Really spiritually raped a woman. Her name's Mary. He gave birth to me, who's my son. That's also me. Okay. And I turned some chicken to salt because she looked back. She was curious, so I killed her and turned her into a salt pillar. And I made a talking snake. Sorry, but um, the giant zoo boats. Okay, sorry, but you know, and it's not just that. Um, it's a whole like voodoo type of thing. Like voodoo and all that is wicked and evil, but Harry Potter's cool. There's been what like 8 Harry Potter movies, spin-offs. They made a whole theme park after Harry Potter where you can go buy wands and drink potions. Like that is just I can never jive with black identified Christians ever because of that. Just for letting that slide. That tells me everything I need to know. I don't really care about everything else about it. I mean, ridiculous stuff, but how you guys are like your own heritage, your own culture, like your own origins, evil. Like that would be okay, but it's so inconsistent. You're watching movies about Thor and Loki, which are like Germanic, you know, deities, but Orisha are evil. Like something's I can never trust you. There's too much is going on there. Like you just what I realized like Christianity is just the lowest tier whiteness. You guys want it's like how you guys like attach to Meghan Markle as like this avatar into whiteness. Like that's what Christianity is. Like you want this they're like, how can we like we get made up the term Latino to give them low tier whiteness. But what about them? It's like, oh yeah, we already knew that they were Christians. They get to be white through Jesus, but they're the lowest tier white. Like you guys want white privilege, like, but you're willing to throw us under the bus for it. Like that's unforgivable. Like how is Harry Potter okay, Thor okay, Loki okay? And then Christianity is a centric religion. What does what does rabbits and eggs have to do with Jesus on Easter? Nothing. Easter is named after the uh this Germanic deity Ostera, and she was a fertility deity, and that's what the eggs and the rabbits are about. Christmas, it comes from a pagan religion, Yule. What does trees have to do with anything? Like Christmas trees. Even Santa Claus, it's white cast propaganda, and you guys indoctrinate your children into that. Like we needed another white savior. He comes in your house and gives you presents. Where's my gun? So, but then how many black identified people are Christian and Muslims are not much different? Like, how dare you throw our originations, cultural originators into the mud? It's the same thing what happened with Little Nas's X video. Like, what about the movie Hellboy or the TV show Daredevil or Loki with his big old horns? There's a TV on so Lucifer. It had like 6 seasons. Who do you think Lucifer is about? It's about Satan. Sabrina. She was a part of on Netflix, part of a satanic cult. That was okay. And then that's like my other last little issue with black identified people. People talk about black unity and black love, but there's a criteria. You gotta be straight, you gotta be Christian, you gotta be democratic, this, that, you gotta be brown, dark brown. There's a criteria, okay? Because what was different about Lil Nas X? Yes, you had an opportunity to impress your white cast Christian master, to throw him under the bus hypocritically. But what's the difference? He's gay? Like, I don't really. I mean, the alphabet cult is an issue too. I don't think we need to support that. But, okay, like, if you want to be, you know, intimate with the same sex, pair bond with the same sex, okay. What does that have to do? It's not a character trait. Um, you don't have to be in a cult. But, um, criteria. And it's not about the issue is not him not supporting gay people. It's about um it's the hypocrisy of it. Like um like you got a lot of you guys will support, rapists and murderers before a gay person. At least they don't murder and kill people and do all these things. Like Bill Cosby was better. Like, what? Like, that's crazy. Like you can see like the Chick-fil-A thing. Like Chick-fil-A was like trying to murder gay people, and black identified people are just marching in there getting their chicken sandwiches. There's like no, if you fall out of the criteria, there's no solidarity. There's no community. If you're not a Christian, oh well, too bad. If you're not a Democrat, oh well. If you're not a liberal, oh well. I mean, if you want to keep voting for a part, you've been complaining about police brutality for how long, and you still voting for the same party? That goes back into the does everything wrong. Like, say if you hire a security detail to protect your house, and someone breaks into your house, okay, they let them break in, hire them again. Someone breaks in, hire them again. Someone breaks in. If you hire them for the 10th time, that's just poor choices. That's just very poor choices. Um, Sorry. Um, that's just poor choices. Like, it doesn't matter if they're the lesser of two evils. They're actually the same party, anyways. Oligarchy, corporatocracy, whatever you want to call it. They just play bad cop, good cop. But if you're not part of that, you're not part of it. And then brown, like being like a bit lighter than average or whatever you want to call it. It's like um, the hostility, the aggression towards light skin, the hypocrisy around the jokes. Don't make a dark skin joke. Don't like, and that goes back to doing everything wrong. It's like y'all just stay like attacking our allies. Like, yes, sure, like, I mean, people don't want a pat on the back and applause. It was basic human decency to sort of fight against these different discrimination things or whatever. But um, then you get sucker punched with someone like light skin, I hate light skin people, and all these crude jokes and all this. It's like policing us, and we can't celebrate our skin tone, and this is that and the fourth. It's like, um, this is like Batman punching Robin. But then you guys do everything wrong according to that. Like watching Batgirl Club, which is just giving, it's like you're painting yourself in a bad image. Like promoting thug culture and this and that. Like you give brown skin a bad name. While everyone's trying to do fight for your right. Like I didn't I stopped watching Disney. The reason I probably stopped watching Disney movies in theaters because they lied in Tiana. Okay? Trying to show solidarity and support and like stop supporting a white cast company. Like, but you guys aren't stopping. They toss you a scrap mermaid, you're good to go. Like there was no movement. There was nothing. But then I get bashed because I just happen to have lighter skin. Like I don't think so. But my point of that is, it's like, and it's true. Like if you're lighter skin, black identical cultists are not for you. The black community is not for you. It's like manipulation. Like we all come in different shades and this, but then you see that they always turn it back to like brown and melanin this and melanin that and this that, and the fourth. And when they're talking, they're like black this, but they're talking about people with dark brown skin. I'm like, I thought we were black too. It's like you guys always pull it back to the criteria. It's like that whole Asian, stop Asian hate. We're all Asian. We're tools. We're props when they want to feel big and popular and bright. But then those Asians, they pull it right back to that very specific demographic of lighter academia, right? Why are you always talking about academia? All Asian identified people, associated people are not into that. But you don't even care about working class, essential worker agents, even within those specific tribes. It's like they bring it back to a very specific demographic, you know, lighter, academia, richer. It's a criteria. And that's what black identified people do. They always pull back. They're like, we're all in this together. We all come in different shades, and they pull it back to a very specific demographic. They're them first. They're not advocating for everyone. Okay, it's a very specific criteria. If you don't match the criteria, you are going to be marginalized, omitted, or even attacked and scapegoated. There's no point um, to being part of this self-destructive, whiny community. Community. And I say community because there is no community. There's communities, it's fragmented, there's circles, but then and there's sometimes temporary alliances, but even those are fading. Like, okay. So yeah, that's my sort of journey out of Blackistan, out of black identity extremism, out of black cultism. Okay. I don't um, identify as African American or black, and people don't really have a right to assume my identity. Okay, receipts, please show me. Where is proof for race? You should, if it's proof, you should be able to say it in a sentence or two. What's the proof? Why are you imposing a debunked concept onto me? Why do you honor like Keanu Reeves and Jason Momoa? Like you can acknowledge that they have this certain origin, but then you acknowledge their other origin as well. Like we're admixed. Like basically all of us. Why are you calling me black? even if it was real. So when you mix 80% black paint and 20% white paint, the paint is black. That doesn't make sense. Don't call me black, please. Don't call me African American. Never been there. Never been there before. Never been there. Okay. So that's my journey out of like I said, that's why I don't identify with it. That's why I don't really don't want anything to do with it or anyone who identifies as black. Like I don't like no, I don't like you. That doesn't even mean that I don't dislike I dislike some of you. But some of you, I mean, it's whatever. It's neutral. Okay, you don't owe me anything. I don't owe you anything. It's like I don't like white people. If you identify as white, I don't like you. Why do you identify as a debunked concept? Even if it was real, why do you identify as a specific skull shape? Why do you have an identity based on an appearance, on a skin tone? There's some sinister, devious, selfish reason. It's because you, and that's kind of what I guess the last, very last point, 1.1 is this delusion, is this greed, is that super cultism because white identified people can't let go of that caste status because it's like it's the hype. Like you see, like white caste people will light up when you're talking about ancient Greece. It's like that has nothing to do with you. Even like modern Greeks with sort of Greek heritage, it has nothing to do with it. Not genetically. Our genes are always changing and evolving. You're not even genetically the same, probably similar. Some of you are similar to ancient Greek DNA, but it's not the same because it evolved, it's changed. You're not the same genetically, socially, anything. Then there's people who like white cast people, like, how are you lighting up with pride? Like I saw people get literally offended, like when they were like implied Cleopatra was um something or other. Like she was a Greek, whatever she was. Who cares? Why are you so offended? What does that have to do with you? Like the white people try to. First of all, it's already problematic that you're retroactively identifying people as white. No, it's not just a race. There's this cultural and character traits being associated with it with this, right? They didn't identify that way, but they want to take credit. It's like they're glory vampires. You're harvesting the dead for their glory, like taking credit for these retroactively labeled white people, where you're like so proud, and it has nothing to do with you. It's like being proud to one. It's like being proud of being tall. You didn't do anything to be born that way, and then you're not genetically those people. You're not socially those people. Nothing. It has nothing to do with you at all. And you see how like white identified people will be like, I am not to blame for what my originators do, but how could you take credit for people all the way from like ancient Greece? You're taking credit for it. You're proud of it, but wouldn't you can't like cherry pick it. You would have to if that's reflecting on you, then all of it will reflect on you. Dodo, like would it not? Like how are you putting up Abraham Lincoln statues, but then you're not to blame for what your originators did? Or how are you proud to be Viking? Like it makes no sense. You would be also that would also reflect on you. That would also paint your character. You would also have to take credit for that. But they can't let it go. Right? They're benefiting from the hype, the exploitation. But that's the same thing with black identified people. It's that black excellence. They do the same thing, but then it's like that black excellence. Like we have the highest prison rates, we have the highest crime rates, we have the highest poverty rates. What are you talking about? And that's not to bash us or any people or anything. It's just you're a cultist. You're just the black like you're only you're only picking out the good parts, which is the problem is it's so counterproductive. If we're black excellence, then there's nothing to change. It's like how we just will praise morbidly obese people. You're so great, fat excellence. Da, 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 da. No, you're norm. If you're, they're not gonna want to lose weight if you're saying it's excellent. If you're praising it, like I give up. I give up. This is like insurmountable. Like it's just too much. And then on top of that, you get the hostility, whether you're light, like, or like witchy, or if you kiss a dude, like, if like what? And then on top of that, it's like you embrace killers and murderers and rapists and infidelity, like how you worship Kobe Bryant, but you claim to be a Christian, but didn't he commit infidelity and then you instantly forgave him? Like, I can't do this anymore. Okay. Um, and then that it blinds you how we're being exploited by the crown cast. All these people from these different, Commonwealth countries connected to Britain are being overrepresented in the media, not just that, but like in these jobs. Like, why are so many African immigrants doctors? If you try to become a doctor, you're not going to be getting a job in a hospital because they're all filled with these crown cast, British connected immigrants. You're going to be working in the boonies, in the backwoods, in a busted prison because those jobs are taken up. But you're blind to that just because they're identified as black. When they're going to prioritize other people within the crown caste system, they're going to hire a British person, an Australian person, someone within their tribe before they hire you, someone with Atlantic Creole heritage, North American heritage. I'm not here to be a sacrificial lamb. I'm Gaian with Atlantic Creole origins, U.S. Creole origins, and that includes origins from different parts of Africa and Europe. But even that, I'm not even culturally that. Like, I just, which I think is evolved. I'm a civil.